All right, good evening and welcome to the third and final session of the Virtual Classrooms STI. Hope everyone's doing well. Before we get fully underway, just going to do a little housekeeping and remind everyone as I share my screen that the blog post for this course has not only the resources, additional resources, but now it's got 2 session recordings. So you can go back and watch the previous one. This new one will now be on there. In addition, there is now a link to this participant projects document. If you click on that, that will open up into this, and then you'll notice that there's a little description on there. Name, obviously put your name, but not just, like your nickname or first name. Make sure it matches the registration name that you registered under, because then eventually this will be shared not just with Vivian and myself, but also with Fran and Anne-Marie. So they'll be able to make sure that they can tie the things together. For the project, I know some of you, we all started the folder. Everyone created a folder to put a bunch of stuff in to try. Some of you may have experimented with all of them and have sort of halfway done projects of each, and you kind of want to put the whole folder in. You can do that. You can put a link to the entire folder of a whole bunch of different examples of what you were playing around with. Or you can just put a link to a single file. Like if you really connected with the escape room, you can put that in. The notes section is to just kind of explain. So if it's a link to a folder, the notes may just say, hey, this is a folder where I tried like 3 different things in 3 different ways. So it's a bunch of half-finished things, but it's giving me a great idea or a great sense of, requirement. Or if it's the one project. Now, just so everyone knows, when you're looking at a folder, you share a folder the same way. So like if I wanted to share my 5472 folder, I can go into this folder and I have a little like down arrow, and I can share this folder. So when I click the share thing, I would get the link. Now, for me, and any Scarsdale person, is going to say Scarsdale Public Schools. Now that's fine. You can just straight copy the link. So let's say I copy it. Let's say I put my name in as a quick example. I can put the link just straight in like that. To make it actually a link, just press the space bar. It'll make it a link and say, the class folder with a bunch of my attempts. And you can have that in there. Now, if you are outside of the Scarsdale domain and you're doing it, when you do this, it's going to say Edgemont or whatever your district is. In order for Vivian, me, Fran, and Anne-Marie to see it, you'd have to click change. And then there's this little drop down. And you can either make it anyone with the link, meaning anybody, or just say got it. Anyone with the link would mean that anybody can look at it no matter who they are. If you don't want to do that, what you would do is, when you come in here and you go to share, you could actually share specifically, like let's say with Anne-Marie. You don't need to notify them because then they'll get an email. But if I didn't notify Anne-Marie and I click share, she is now able to view that folder with that link. The link doesn't change. So you can basically, if you're outside of Scarsdale, or even if you're in Scarsdale and you don't want all of Scarsdale to see it, if you want it to be restricted so only a couple people see it, all you have to do is when you come to this, you can change this to restricted. And then you notice I said done, but if I go back to it, you'll see that these are the only people now who can see it. And you can then even also change it to viewer. So if I wanted to, that link that I copied, it's restricted only to people you add. So maybe you only want myself, Vivian, Fran, and Anne-Marie to see it. That's fine. You could put us all in there. So if I did V. Robert, I don't have to notify her. I'm going to make her a viewer. So that way you're not going to get those, like Fran and Anne-Marie aren't going to get a ton of emails, but that way if they were to click on this link, it would open up for them. So on the back end, it's sort of seamless. They don't know what the permissions are for it. They just know that they're able to see it. So essentially name, and then either the whole folder, like I just showed you, or if you wanted to, you could come to this and just same concept, share, just put the same couple of people in there, copy the link and put it in, and then just explain, that it was, you sort of really connected with the virtual adventures and you made a really in-depth one, whatever. Cool. Everyone good so far? Awesome. So, Vivian, what shall we do first, my friend?
Well, I think the first thing we should do is just see if anybody has questions, anything they want reviewed from, last week. We can start there, and then maybe from there, we can just have people talk about what they found useful, share some of their stuff. I don't know. What do you think?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it, Ashley.
I had tried to use the slidesmania.com
Mm-hmm.
and because I found those like filing cabinets, Viv, that you were using, and I had an idea for them. And then I kind of like stopped myself because it was like you needed to add this extension, and then I added it, and then I got freaked out that I was doing something to my computer that you couldn't fix, Chris, because I was at home. So I just wanted to make sure that that's the right step to getting the templates that you want there on your computer.
So when I've gone, like it'll ask you, do you want to use this template in as a PowerPoint or Google Slides, right?
Okay.
Did you get to that part?
It like when I went to the website and then
because
I went to like education, and then I saw the filing cabinets, and then I clicked on it, and there was like this big green button that was like start.
No, that's an ad.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll show you real quick. I mean, those websites, you got to be careful about that stuff.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't do anything to my computer.
So Slides Mania, this is one of them, and if we were to look at them, there's all these, things on the side that may or may not be ads, right? Things pop up, start here, stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, those are ads. Down here, open in Google Slides. What happens is, and sometimes those ads will appear here. You really got to be careful.
Okay.
If you open in Google Slides, it'll open up like this and in like present mode, and then you just go use template.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, you don't need to install anything with these. It basically just makes it a copy in your drive, and it just converts it from that sort of preview mode to this. And then when you're looking at this is just in your drive in general. Organize it. Make sure you put it somewhere, right? So what you can do is you can move this, the little move button, and you can decide where it goes. If like you put it somewhere and you decide, I like it, but I don't want to mess it up. Like I don't want to screw it up. You could always do file, make a copy.
Mm-hmm.
And then right there, and then you can do like the entire presentation. So that way, if you felt like you wanted to play around with it, but like delete some things, move things around, you could always work on the copy and have this one sort of sitting there as like a generic.
Yeah, that's a great organizational note. Like, because what happens is like, so if I copy, if I go to, let's just say Slides Mania or whatever, and I choose a template, I move it just into what I call like a template folder. And then if I find a project I want to use it for, I'll make a copy of it. And like if it's a science project, I'll put it in that folder, because a lot of the templates can be used for different kinds of projects, like a science project or a social studies project. Like you could technically use the same template in every, in every content area. So having like the original in one place and then making copies and put them wherever it is you're using them is an easier way to find things. Or at least that's something that works for me.
Yeah, the organization piece is going to be big because you're going to have potentially a lot of files, a lot of sort of templates, things that you want to make copies of. Because essentially, if you start going to like Slides Mania, Slides Carnival, any of those, you're going to want to use those and maybe play around with them or use them separate from other things. So like one thing that I do in order to keep this stuff separate is I have in my drive, I believe I call it templates. Let me see. Did I call it templates? Yeah, I have a folder where I've kept all these. Slide templates. Yep. So I made a folder and I just call them slide templates. And then I have those in there. So if I ever want to use them, what I can do is I can either make a copy of these, or if I go to new Google Slides, when this opens up, it's blank. There is, you know, the theme, like you can import themes, you can import those templates from it and it'll bring everything in. What I find to be the most useful is just depending on what I'm doing, I like to not mess with those. I like to make sure, like I kind of come in here and if I like this one, I'll make a copy of it, change the name. So if I wanted to, I go file, make a copy of the entire presentation. We'll call it STI copy file demo. Then you'll notice that it says, do you want to save it in the same place where you have it? So you might store all your templates in one place, all your baseline Slides Mania files. You can click on this and then say, you know what, I don't want to store this in there. I want to organize it because I want to make sure I put it in the right place. Now the organization, again, like Vivian said, is going to be really big, especially when you're doing so many different potentially, you know, adventure files. Maybe you're doing a bunch of forms, like Google Forms for the escape rooms and things like that. And then I just always have to remember where I put my PDs, and then I have an STI folder. See, I'm a little organized. Virtual classrooms. And then let's say I wanted to put it in this course folder. I then can go select. I click OK. It opens up in a new tab. So now I can then start working on this new one that I have named STI copy file demo. And it doesn't mess with my original template that I had downloaded from Slides Carnival or wherever. So that's always helpful to kind of look at the file, make sure it's the right one, make a copy of it, change the name, put it in the right spot, and then you'll know that it's organized and in the right place.
So two things that came up in the chat, Chris. One is a question about publishing slides so kids don't automatically go to the next slide. And
So, yeah, I saw it. So like that's sort of two different things there. The publishing it doesn't prevent them from automatically going to the next slide. So for instance, what publishing does is if I said view, what would happen is, and I gave you view access to this file, you would see it essentially just like this, but you wouldn't be able to make changes. What publish does is when you go to file, publish to the web, let's say I'm just gonna do the link. I'm just gonna make that so even if they click on the play button, it's not gonna auto play. I'll make it set it to a minute. I click publish, and then there's always this little pop-up says, okay, I click okay. I'm gonna copy this link. Now, if I just put this into a new browser window, you'll see that this is how this shows up. Now, if they click on the slide, it's going to advance to the next one. In order for it to advance automatically, they have to click on this play button, and very few people actually click on that play button. People instinctually will just click on the middle of the slide. So that's sort of a different thing. You do publish to the web so that it looks like this, and you can set the auto timing to like a minute so that it won't auto play. Kind of keeps it contained. It can't mess with the slides. It's not gonna like start running every 3 seconds. To make sure that they don't accidentally click to the next slide is a little bit different. That's where if, let's say over here, I wanted the only thing to be clickable would be like, I don't know, the exclamation point, right? What I would have to do is I would have to take, or let's say the word hello. I don't want them to click anywhere else except the word hello. This is where what I would do is I would put in a shape. And I would essentially cover that whole thing. But I'm going to make it transparent, or yeah, I'm going to make it transparent, and I'm going to make the line transparent. Now, it's on top of it. I can't do anything. But if I click off to the side, now I have this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring, my hello is going to be the link. So I'm going to arrange, order, and I'm going to bring that to front. So when I go to present mode on that, and actually I skipped a step. So if I click on this giant box right now, that's on top of everything except for the word hello. And I can even extend this box to cover the whole slide. I'm going to take this and I'm going to link this to itself. So I'm going to link this to slide 3. Click apply. So this way, when I'm in present mode, if I click the hand, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to go anywhere because I have this transparent box essentially covering the whole area. If I click over here, it's not going to go anywhere. It is technically going somewhere. It's just going right back to itself. But since I put the word hello, I put that text box above it. Now, if I click on hello, now it goes to the next slide. So that essentially is like you're taking the 1, 2, or 3 elements that you want. You're moving them to the front. And then what you're doing is you're having a transparent box essentially covering everything else except for those 1, 2, or 3 elements. That big giant transparent box that's over the whole thing is a link. It is a button. It's just that it's linking to itself. So
Chris,
that's sort of the 2 different questions. Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
Chris, this is Jonathan Hansenberg from Edgemont. It was my question. I did that. What I noticed was that although that works with the mouse, the arrow keys still allowed me to advance the slides straight through. And I was kind of working on a choose your own adventure where that would completely ruin the flow. So I was wondering if there's a way to override the arrow keys as well, or is that just bad luck on my part?
No, unfortunately, to my knowledge, it's not. There is no way to do it. That's where one of the things you do with that is basically try to set up the beginning part of like you need to click on these buttons. So like even if the arrow key does go forward, you have that sort of home page, like on Vivian's classroom, she had like the front door that had like the things. You sort of start driving the student's eye to like the 1 or 2 or 3 things. So they're not looking for the arrow key. They're purposely clicking on portions of the slide. So then going forward, it'll sort of be like innate where it's like, oh, there's a rock and a pencil. I know I got to click on one of those 2 things.
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured. I just had the choices pretty straightforward. Say, if you want this, press here. If you want this, press there. And then I use the transparent box. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And I think the other thing with that is, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure what level you teach, but for younger kids, like at least elementary kids, like it's always good to go through something like that with them first, even if it's not your own. But like for, the escape room, like I kind of went through it with them once, like how does one do a virtual escape room? How does one do, a virtual choose your own adventure? Because I think they want to do it, and they want to have fun with it, right? That's the whole point of like, being surprised and making your choice. So sometimes they just need a little teaching into how to do it, a little bit of instruction, but, and even for a middle school kid, like they may not have, as much experience either. But I always feel like that helps because the first thing they want to do is click on everything. So if you kind of explain to them that like, it's more fun when you kind of do it the way it was intended. For most kids, I mean, there's always a kid who's looking like to, outdo you or figure it out or like.
And you know what? And sometimes if you have one of those kids and you're testing one of these out, you share it with that kid first. And you go, look, I made this thing. Do me a favor, bang around on it for like your homework. Like the kid who's always finished first and always wants to like, hey, like I made this thing. I want you to bang around on it for like an hour and tell me what doesn't work, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And like write me a Google Doc and sort of give me some feedback on how I might improve this. And then you kind of have a literal test case where like it's an actual student in your class, but one who's kind of capable of doing that and providing you feedback, and then you can kind of fine tune it. And in a virtual world too, kids, you're always looking for like, and even, I mean, we're going to be potentially hybrid, right? But like, you're still not going to have like the mailbox monitor, and you're not going to have like the run a note to the main office monitor, stuff like that. So one of the jobs for your class, if you're virtual or hybrid, could be like, you are my beta tester. Like, I'm going to share this thing with you a day or 2 beforehand, and I want you to test it out and give me feedback. so that I can make it better. And then you can kind of like get the kids more engaged with that. And that could be part of like the homework or whatnot. But teaching them how to use it is definitely key. I mean, just like anything, you can't expect them to sort of walk into a classroom and know where to go or what to do. It's the rules and routines. So with any of these things, it's the rules and routines of this new virtual classroom or this new choose your own adventure or whatever it may be. But what's nice is if you do it once and you maintain the same premise throughout, like by making a copy and just changing the text, then by like the second one, the kids will be like, oh yeah, totally. I know that when you click on the rock, you go this way, or I know that you got to click on the go left, go right buttons, whatever. Like it'll become normal for them.
Yeah.
One of the other questions I saw was about animations and memory. They don't take up memory. Google, one of the nice things about Google is there is essentially no memory. It's all virtual. It's all running in the cloud. However, if you layer on a lot of images, a lot of links, and then start tossing in animations and stuff like that, it could slow down the transition. So like when the slide moves to the next one, things kind of come in, it could kind of like give a hiccup to the particular child's or user's machine. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen to everyone's machine. Depends on their Wi-Fi connection, stuff like that. The other thing with animations you gotta be wary of is the more you do them, sort of exponentially more difficult your thing becomes. Because if you're having you come in and then the thing comes in when they click and then this thing and then that thing, and then you got to start remembering what's coming in automatically, what's the order that things are coming in, what do they need to click, but what happens without a click, kind of starts adding layers, which you can totally do. Like you could have yourself like slide into the frame. I would sort of start with like a simple one like that. Because then otherwise, if you have too many, you start adding layers of complexity that don't necessarily add value. Because you could, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
It had to do also with kind of the whole idea of potentially some live streaming going on and a lot of media kind of happening at the same time. So I'm wondering, in your kind of opinion, should we stay away from some of those things? I wasn't even thinking about it for the kids. I was thinking about like a teacher presentation. So if I'm trying to do something fun or run an activity like on my smartboard or whatever they're called now in my classroom, do you think it might cause more of an issue to have like animation in the presentation versus something a little more simple, because we will have students potentially streaming in a lot more media and like all the computers kind of running at the same time?
It could just be not as smooth because it's more of a bandwidth thing. It's just like sucking up bandwidth. And I would say
that's what I was curious about.
Yeah, and I would say those things, if it's not adding ridiculous value, don't do it. Because you can also fake animations. And what I mean by that is like if you want your thing to like pop up on the screen after a few seconds, the first slide that has the blank one, just duplicate it and then add the next one. And then you just know to click and it makes it look like it's animated, but essentially the slides themselves are sort of lightweight. So you can kind of make a bunch of duplicates of the same slide without having to sit there and have all kinds of different animations happening in the background. Because sometimes I have had presentations like at conferences where I have an animation where I try to have something and like you hit play and you're like, where's the, oh wait, oh there it goes. And it's basically because like the network is slow, you know? So it's just something to be aware of, that it's a potential congestion point for data traffic.
Like, are you talking about like the animation that comes with the slide versus like importing like a video of your Bitmoji? So like I know the trick with like Snapchat and like you can kind of video, you know, some movement and then kind of upload it, if you will, onto your presentation.
Yeah.
So is that going to work different than like the animation that kind of comes as part of the Google Suite?
No, the only one that would work really different would be if you put that video on YouTube and then embedded that YouTube video in your presentation, because then it's not really running for the presentation.
I'm not going to do that. Okay.
Right, because then it's not running for the presentation itself. It's like you're basically just cutting like a little hole in the presentation and YouTube is running it. When you start layering things on that live within the presentation, that can potentially like slow it down, like the whole thing, especially if you're talking about like a 20, 30 slide presentation.
Okay.
It could just drag. You kind of want to like use slides to its benefit, which is like objects, images, text, like simple, clean, and then you start doing media, like let YouTube host that, because then they can sort of like balance each other out.
Yeah, at least as comfortable as I am with, technology and how some of these things work, I'm really just looking at the classroom and the slides and the escape rooms as like really engaging, fun looking portals to take the kids off to where the content really is, right? Like it gets too complicated to try to duplicate or embed the content in this other portal. Right?
You know what it is? I started
steps,
noticing on
right?
the bottom, it said like, it shows like how much you're using. And I guess I never noticed that before. And it's like inching up a little bit in terms of, I guess, how much of your drive. And if they're thinking of cleaning out drive at all or anything like that. I'm just kind of wondering like what takes up like the most.
Well,
that's about storage.
But that's storage. That's different than
yeah.
That's just storage is a bucket. You're talking about the actual playing, which is two totally
Well,
different.
I'm kind of talking about both, to be honest. Like if I heard some discussion at some point about kind of cleaning up drive. So I didn't know if I should kind of think about priorities, or if it's not really an issue right now because we have plenty of space.
Even if you had infinite drive space, the larger the presentation, right? Like
right, the slower.
5-slide presentation loads faster than a 200-slide presentation, right? So remember that we don't know where kids are, what their internet access is like, how many other people are in their house online sharing bandwidth. So it still helps to try to keep that something that would load faster, I think.
Yeah.
I guess just when you're talking about making copies of copies of copies, I'm wondering if we should be thoughtful of that, or if there's plenty of space.
There's plenty of space.
Kind of play around. Okay.
There's plenty. There is actually infinite space in Drive. The G Suite for Education accounts have a different storage limit than your standard Google account, and it's unlimited. So it's fine. You're okay. And worst case, you could always download all your stuff and then delete it and redo stuff if like they told you had to. Does that make sense? Cool. Co-teaching, sharing Bitmojis, the easiest way to do that would be to share the file and make the other teacher an editor. So that way they can open it up in their Chrome with their Bitmoji extension and drop the Bitmoji in. And then that way, that's the easiest way to do it, is just have you work on the file or have access to the file. And then even if that teacher just has access to it to drop the Bitmoji on like page 1 and then you copy and paste it the rest of the way, that's fine. And you could, as co-teachers, you could have a slide at the end that you hide that doesn't run in the presentation, where you just insert a whole bunch of different types of Bitmojis of each of your characters on like a slide or two at the end that either one of you can grab to do inserts with, if that makes sense. The other one that came up, the shape, and change a picture into a shape. So yeah, you can do that to an extent. So that is this. If you are, let me not jack that one up. Let me close my template. So like if I'm over here and I have this picture, I can come up here, this little crop tool, looks like a little foursquare. There's a little triangle next to it. I can click this down triangle and I can turn it into a circle. Well, that was a bad example. Turn it like a triangle. See, cut my arms off because I turned that image into a triangle. So here, let me use my dog friend. Oops, wrong button. So if I click my guy over here and I'll make it a little bit bigger, easier to see, and I click the down arrow, I can do a shape and I can do a circle. And it rounds out that image. You can only tweak it, it's still the same image, and it's still actually there. It's just, it rounded it, it put like a mask on it. Yeah, mask image. You can actually, if you wanted to, make it into like an arrow. You can do pretty much anything you want as long as it's in here. You can't like import a shape to create it. So They're not like the most intriguing of shapes, but there are things in there. You can do that. I don't know why you would do that, but you could play around with it. So you can mask it to have it be a slightly different shape than originally intended. Cool. Let's see, and then we'll get to escape rooms in a minute. Yeah, and you can save photos, control click, alt click, right click, depends on what option you have, and then you can do save image as or save image depending on what device you're on. And then, yeah, put it into a folder and make sure it's organized, just so you have it for later future access. Cool. Did that answer those questions? Cool. So escape rooms. Vivian, you want to take over and lead us back through the escape rooms?
Sure. All right. So I guess tell me what you'd like to do. Like, does somebody have a particular question about, I thought I saw something about Google Forms on escape rooms. Is that it? All right.
Just how do we set up the forms?
Okay. So let's see. Okay. So, so in the escape room, right? We know that like these different pictures are linked to a different, to different forms, right? So, like that image was linked to the very first one. So I guess, Chris, what we should probably talk about with everyone is how to make a form.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of it, right? I hope I'm answering the question. So like once you've decided what image you want to link to the form for the escape room, it's really about, right, like making the form and then linking it to the image. So in my, is it here? Let's see. No, it's not there. I think it's in math. Sorry, one second. Okay, so in my escape room, so in my math escape room folder, I should say, right, I have different folders in there as well, right? So I have the forms, like, so if I knew that I was going to have, I wanted 5 different forms in the escape room, that would mean I would have to link 5 different images so the kids could click on it to get the form. So really what I would have to do is make the form. So, so that's the first thing to do. So for me, my process was content first, right? So I knew that this was going to be like a math review, right? So this was like a math review for the end of the year. So I took 5 different units that we had covered, and I decided, just like the units, right, they went, from less difficult to more challenging. So like for place value, which is the a topic at the beginning of our year, I knew I wanted a Google form for that. So that was my less challenging topic, and I had fewer questions for that. So, so escape room number 1, like, this form had only 5 easy questions about place value on it, right? And then as I went, I knew like what my next chapter maybe was fractions and decimals and word problems and so on, more challenging. So I wrote my questions out first. And then once I had the number of questions I wanted and what kinds of questions I wanted, then I went and made my form, right? So, so here, like, just as an example, right? So once I had all the questions written out, I would make myself a new form. and then it just became a question of, right, in, you know, titling it, inserting the questions I wanted, and then inserting the, right, inserting the images that I wanted there as well, right? So if my answer here is 10, right? Oh, I have the answers instead of doing all the math, right? I go back here, but in any case, like what you'll see is, that's why it's so important to make a table, because it'll have all the answers in it so that you can always just go check. But, oh, it's slow, sorry. Right, so 650 and 360, okay. So, right, so 650, we said, oops, sorry, 50 and 360.
Viv, can you share what happens if you put the wrong answer in?
I will, right? And then, so another thing that you do is maybe insert an image. So let's go back to the form, right? So obviously you're gonna title your form. Maybe it's like, maybe you wanna do it by puzzle, or maybe you wanna give each puzzle a name, right? And then you're going to want to decide what kind of question you want, and you may want to add a description, right? Now, like, let's say, to kind of add to the drama of your escape room, right? Like I wanted to add a section, right? But I wanted to just add the image. Like, you can add an image to, like I had the lock that showed that it was open, but then you add your question. So Jody asked a question about like the right. So submit this form to get the code. I submit the form, I get the code. And when I put it into the next escape room, like if I wanted to, like if I have the wrong answer, I can, so like if I require the right answer to go on to the next one, right? Oh, where is it, Chris? Well, I didn't write a question, right? That helps. I don't know.
There you go.
Do I have a cat? Right? And I want multiple choice. So option 1 is yes. No, right?
What you can do is, if like you wanted the no, you can say, if you have a separate section and the separate section is wrong, you could have, if yes, go to the next section, which is the next question, or no, go to the section that says wrong. So you can.
Can I just ask a question? How do you do sections?
The bottom right corner, there's those little lines.
So when I tried, then you had to link it, and it seems to always come up. So I gave up and went back to just a form.
Well, sections are a form. There's nothing different. They're sections.
But I mean, just a straight form, but the section always said link it to, and then I said the next question, but it seemed to appear. Like hers is only a thing. How do you get it to only appear one question? Oh, she only has one now.
You only have one question in the section. You don't need to have more. The section has to have a question, but you could have 10 questions in a section, or you could have 2.
Or you could just have an image in a section.
I guess what I'm saying, maybe it's when you present. So if you're planning this out and I kept going section and a new question, when I looked at it, I saw all my questions.
But you also have to understand that if you're looking at it, you can't look at it this way. What you have to do is at the top of the form, there's a little like eye icon.
Okay.
You have to look at it that way to preview how it would be seen for somebody else. So if you have all these sections, you're always going to see all the sections because you built them, and you built them in whatever order you built them in. You need to preview it to see what the viewer is going to see, because the other sections are going to be hidden, because they're not going to see those sections until they do something that takes them to that section.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. I think it's because I was looking and I didn't go and see it in the presentation, so I couldn't. Yeah, makes sense.
Right.
But can I have one more question? How do you change the font?
You don't on a form?
Yeah, can
You
you
don't.
change? You don't? Because it always seems so tiny.
Nope. I mean, there's a, you know, no, I mean,
You can't change the font.
no, because it's just,
Okay.
because otherwise it gets too crazy with the different questions and stuff. It's just, it's a standard thing. It also, online stuff is being very limited in terms of what you can change anywhere these days to meet with ADA requirements for screen readers and stuff like that.
And once your puzzle is made, right? So here, like you copy it, and then that's the link in, right, in the escape room. So like if I were linking it to one of these images, I think a lot of them already have links, but like, yeah, right? So like if I wanted to, I could link that puzzle here, right? And then I could just paste the link in there, and then that puzzle would be linked to that image. I did not do a good job of explaining the form, but
What I'll do though is let me show you, I'll take over for a second and sort of touch base, sort of show you how to kind of build from the beginning with the sections. So like this is this demo form, right? So I have this code. And then what I did was I added a section right here. So I have second section, right? It says my second section, image title, right? I just put an image in there. I can come over here. I could add another section, and let's call it the third section. And then I can add inside of that section. Now I have a question. No. Yes. No. I can add another question, and it's still in that section, right? Is it red? Right, so there's my different things, okay? Now, what I can do is, you notice that under these different sections, I have this title section. I have now a section 2 with a bunch of questions. And at the end of it, oh, this one shouldn't be here. This should have been at that top section because this was the first bit. So I got this little grip pad right here. I can pick this up and I can actually move this up. And now I'm going to move this into that first section. And you'll notice this is after section 1, continue to next section, or you can decide what you want to do. You know, and then the section 3, after section 2, continue to next section or do something else. So you can have one question in a section, and it's like after the section, go to the left, go to the right. The key is like when I'm looking at this, I see all of this stuff because I'm making it. But if I preview it, I'm only seeing this because this is showing it to me as a person would see it. And that's important because you need that. Like you need to know, and that's why that preview window is so important because you looking at it like this doesn't, this is how you're building it and you have the ability to kind of move this stuff around a little bit. And that's why, like Vivian said, sort of sketch it out on paper.
Yeah,
right?
I was just going to say that when I sometimes I think, oh, I'll just do it right in the form. And then I get confused looking at the form because it's one long linear set of questions and options.
Mhm.
And I have to remind myself to stop, go get a big piece of paper, sketch it all out like a tree of where I want each question to send the kids, right? Or the respondent. And then it's a lot easier to go back to do it. I find it hard to wrap my head around it when it's just this one long linear sheet of options.
yeah, Chris, so if I can share screen
Yeah.
for a second, and I'll show people like, so here is like puzzle 2 that I made, right? I made sure like in that kind of title section, right? I made sure like don't use any commas or units, like any information they need to complete the puzzle, right? And then like they insert their code, right? And once their code was entered, then like they could start, right? So I wanted like a little image of a door there, like, I don't know, really tricky. And, then they could start their questions, right? So this was the second puzzle. So it was a little bit harder, right? Until they finished, right? And again, I wanted to insert the same image of the, of the open lock, right? And then like a little celebration for them that they had done it, and then they submit and they get the next code, right? So what's helpful is that in my folder here, right, here are all the different puzzles organized, right, by puzzle. And I know, right, that like it goes 1 to 5, easiest to most challenging. But then again, having that, oh, not that one, sorry. Having the table, if I can find the table, where did I put the table? Right, having that information somewhere kind of at your fingertips is just like the second part of organizing your forms and knowing that you have everything that you need, right? Because when a kid's like, I know the answer is.
Viv, they can't advance in the form and get the code until they put the right answer in. Is that true?
That's how I made my form. But yes, because I needed it to be self-correcting. Like I needed them to be able to do this on their own. But like inevitably, like somebody emails me to argue that I am incorrect and the answer really is not 10. And, rather than be like, oh, is it? I don't know. Like I've got, because that happens to me too. I've got the answer right there. And I have made, obviously I, like Chris said, like it's super important to have somebody test it, right? So like in my house, it was my husband and my son who were my guinea pigs. Like I made them do it 10 times. So
a quick question. So at the end, you have that last page. So they like unlock it, yay! And then they have that last page. The code is blank. How do you create that last page so you're embedding your unique code on that very last screen that they see?
Go ahead, Chris.
Up at the top, Vivian, you scroll to the top, there's that little gear icon. And if you click that gear icon, there's a presentation tab at the top. And it says confirmation message. And that's where you would do that. And that's also where you could unclick show link to submit another response if you don't want them to do it again for whatever reason. That's where you put that in. That's where then it goes to the next one. And then if you X that out real quick, Vivian, I'll just point out another couple of little things while you're there. Like if you go down to, let's say, puzzle 2, that first question, and just up, Vivian, the first question.
Oh, insert the code?
Yeah, just click there. So when you're working on these questions, you also have a bunch of other stuff. So like if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see like those 3 little dots in the bottom right. So you can decide that, click that. You have like the response validation and the description, but what you can also do, and this is because this is already set up for response validation, scroll down to a question that's just, that doesn't have, so like click that. And then, that one has a response. Go up to the picture, just click on the picture. Let's see if it'll let you do it with 3 dots. Scroll up. No, up a little bit, Vivian. To the 3 dots to the right of the picture.
Sorry. Yep.
No, it's here. Let me. I'm going to show you what I was. Let me show you, because there's, in terms of doing the different questions, like you have, so a question that just is like more generic. Under those 3 dots, one of the things you can have is go to section based on answer. So this is where you can kind of have a little bit of that choose your own adventure type thing if you wanted to built into this. Is you could have these sections and you could say, like, if I wanted to do this, like I do the 3 dots and I do go to section based on answer, like if they go to the next section, because maybe that's the correct answer. And then this maybe goes to that like picture that says wrong or whatever it is, like that's how you could also set up that type of thing.
Chris, have you tried have you used Flippity at all for the, they're kind of like digital escape rooms. Have you
What's
tried
it called?
It's Flippity, like Flippity. So they have something similar where you could do like a series, you like unlock the locks
Mm-hmm.
and you can do, I think, like up to 7 questions. And basically you input your information, your questions on a spreadsheet. They give you a template, you input it on a spreadsheet, and you end up sharing a link to your, it's called a scavenger hunt.
Yeah, I'm
adventure.
looking at it right now.
Um,
I'm not familiar with it, but
So it's like the same idea, but not as, I think that this is like what we're talking about is definitely more thoughtful. But if like the technology piece of creating the forms and, having all the different slides, like my kids, my students will get like overwhelmed with so much movement, if
Mhm.
that makes like, so somebody had suggested this to me and I just thought maybe it could be helpful for some people.
That's really cool. I've never heard of it before.
I'm playing around with it a little bit. And it
Yeah,
definitely is more simple. One of the things, so yeah, depending on your kids, one thing that I like about, or at least for you guys, and then you guys make the judgment yourself in terms of best use. One of the things we like about going through this process for you guys of building these forms and stuff is so that you can make those educated decisions about like, there's a lot that goes into this, but maybe it's too much for the kids and I need something simpler, right? Because a lot of times we were talking about this sort of earlier when people were first jumping on, is like you'll read about these things and you hear about them. So having seen this and doing a quick look at Flippity, Flippity is like way simple and way easy, which definitely may be more in line with like lower grade kids. What's kind of nice for that middle, like maybe third, fourth and up, is that you having built a Google form for them, and even if you just do maybe like 3 questions for an escape room, a simple one, you have an understanding of how Google Forms works, or the virtual classroom, whatever it is. Then you could turn it around and have them create them, because then you having built it can then flip it around and say, all right, I can now support the students in them creating their own versions of these. Flippity is cool because it's sort of easy and it's like drag and drop and it's simple and it kind of gets the point across, but there's not that like innate like creation sense on it. So you can kind of weave in that like technical skill of once you show it to them and they have fun with it, you can ask them to create a virtual locker, a virtual one, or a 3-question scavenger hunt. And then you can then support them in learning Google Forms and learning Google Slides and stuff like that. Catherine.
I was going to ask, it'd be possible, I think, for the younger grades to, rather than linking to that form where the questions are being asked, if each slide essentially was a question, and let's say the answers are 5, 4, 3, and 2, they click on 5. If that's the right answer, they move to the next part of the escape, and the other ones just link to a oops, try again slide. So that you're not dealing with that many levels, and the amount of information obviously is much smaller, but you're just trying to give them that sort of visual learning repetition.
Right. And that's what's so great, Catherine, is that like once you have some experience in all these different platforms and like doing these different things, like you problem solve, like you find workarounds, you like figure out something that works better for you. And I think that's the thing that was so exciting to me when I said to Chris, hey, let's do this course, is that I would have never spent so much time in Google Forms or slides or like, it was just like, give me a doc and let's go.
Right.
But just like playing around and learning, like you see what the possibilities are. And then like, with a little creativity, like you almost don't mind doing all this work.
Almost.
But, I totally agree with you. And I think it's so great that like you just figured out like another way that works for you, that will work for your kids. Like to me, that's what's so important about this.
Well, because I also think that the forms themselves are somewhat limited. Like I'm a music teacher, so a lot of the stuff I want the kids responding to are images, of notes on a staff, and Google Forms isn't going to really support that.
However, it can, because you could put images of notes on a staff in. So like when
as
you're
an image, yeah,
as a question,
Okay.
So like when you're doing this, like I can make, let me just kind of come down to the end. So like, so I'm going to make a, I'm going to add, wait, where'd my question go? Okay. So there it is. There's a question. So, you know, what is this? Hold on. Sorry. Okay. What is this a picture of? What you can do is you can add a picture to the question, and we can say, you know, music. And I can insert that. So what is that? Now the option one is, you know, note, sound, whatever, right? Where you're asking them to say, look at this picture, tell me what it is, and you got to choose the right answer.
Okay.
What you can also do though, which is cool, is, you know, like pick the right one. And then down here, you can say, we'll just say dog. And then here's this little image icon. So for that, I can come over here and I can say cat. So if you wanted from a music standpoint, you can say, you know, which one is the right tempo or which one is the right beat. You can then say, you know, you have these options, make sure you spell them correctly. And then you have essentially one that is correct. And then the other 2 or 3 or whatever it is could be incorrect. So they have to then know which one is correct. So when you're looking at this, they would then see this and say, all right, they got to pick the right one. Dog, well, that's not a dog. A turtle, oh, that is a turtle. So this would be the right answer. And that's how you can weave in things like, if you're an art teacher, you can put up different pictures of artists and say like, who painted, you know, which is the correct, you know, artist for the painting, you know, the music, like which one represents, you know, whatever beats per minute or something like that.
Right.
You can definitely play around with that. It's not going to be perfect by any stretch, but it's nice that it allows you to put images attached to answers as well as images attached to questions.
Right. Nice. Okay. Thanks for showing me that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's not perfect by any means, so don't, you know, but it just it
And the
gives
fact that the font can't be bigger and clearer for younger readers, that's a little frustrating, but
right.
Yeah.
Right. So with that, like I would say, you know, if you're on a Chromebook, you know, you tell them just to do like the pinch on their trackpad and it'll zoom in on the particular like window. Or, you know, you could always do like, you know, Command plus on a Mac or Control plus on a Chromebook to zoom in on it. On an iPad, they can just pinch and zoom on the iPad to zoom in on it. So you just, again, you sort of have to like remind them that there's ways to kind of get around that.
Right. That's good. Good advice. Yeah.
Again, not perfect, but like there's sort of the little kind of like
little workarounds.
Yeah, in practice hacks, so to speak. What else about escape rooms? Nothing.
And by the way, like people have asked, you know, for me to share like the, you know, can you share like the escape room or the moving up slides? Those are all in the notebook that Chris put embedded on his STI blog page, right? So if you go there and scroll through that slideshow, everything is linked there that we're talking about.
Any questions about anything else before we get to a little bit of putting you on the spot to share your work? Any other technical questions about any of this? Cool. All right. Who wants to toss up what they've been working on? And we know it's not finished. Let's go Karen R first, and then we'll go Deborah. So share your screen and
you might notice a little bit of similarities because I loved Deborah's.
That's fine.
A little bit.
That's fine.
Okay. So I decided that because we will be wearing masks and look like aliens this year, that I would do a space theme. So this was my first slide, just to welcome. And then I thought that was cute. I have my little spaceship here as my home, to get back to the home page button. And just fooling around with different ideas. So this is going to be like my jumping off page that will have access to all things. So like this word wall, I'm working on this, you know, as we speak. So that link is going to take me to this page. And then each one of these boxes or cubes will go to that letters word wall. I haven't done any of that yet, but this is where I get stuck. I don't know how to move back to, okay. No, that's not what I wanted to do yet. Oops. I
So-
should have gone to the little
So you
Stop.
should, or what you do is that, you know, you have that little spaceship.
right.
You know, you think about where that spaceship takes you to. Does that spaceship take you back to the front page, or does it take you back to that
Yeah, it should
classroom?
take me back to here. And
Should
now
take
that
you
I'm
back. Yeah, so it's just then a matter of I'm making sure that that little spaceship is on every slide,
right.
linking
Which
back
is
to
so
here.
not right now because I'm throwing the slides together and then I'll do that.
Totally.
Because I added new slides. So like this iPad right here, when you click on it, it'll take you to a bigger iPad.
Nice.
And then that'll take you to each
Yeah.
link, which I've done already, but it's not attached to any of my kids yet. So, but I need to put my little spaceship there.
That's cool.
And then let me go back. See. Okay, so here's my reading room. These two, hold on, I have to just pick up my dog. These two right now have me going to Epic, but then I found on one of those websites that you guys, the Facebook website, all of these amazing read alouds that are done. So it will connect to different, sorry, it's like the zoo here, Ghost, to different authors' homepages, like Kevin Henkes has one now, and Dan Gutman, and all those other things. I spent like 7 hours doing this between yesterday and today. This is going to link, the math is going to link to our workbook if we have that online, since we still don't know what's going on. And then I have, I won't bore you much longer, but like these are the Epic things that the ELA committee gave. That was my original morning meeting. This was original before I did my iPad. Those were just, then this is full Deborah. This is gonna be my morning meeting. I just stole everything that she had on her thing, and I'm working on my own calendar and stuff like that. And this will connect to different ideas. That's my iPad, and that's pretty much.
Now go back.
No, I was doing a math center. This is why I asked you, because I wanted to have like a little
Octagon or
shelf. So if you click on all of these, they take you to virtual manipulatives.
Nice.
So that's what I did.
Cool. Yeah, and go back to that was it the morning meeting one?
Yeah.
So that morning meeting slide is just an example of where like you definitely, like, it will be helpful to have someone of that age or in your class
Right.
sometimes test them out for you.
Right.
Because for me, as sort of like a OCD organized adult, like it was a little bit like too much going on because there were so many different like colors and like things to click on. But for a kid, because it's like you come here, you're like, oh my God, like morning meeting, but is it morning or is it money or is it like what's happening?
Right.
But for a first grader, you walk them through the purpose of this, they may totally get it. And
Right.
that's why not just first grade, but it could be high school, middle school, whatever. Once you start using this, if you have one or two of those kids who are like really quick and always looking for a little bit something extra, that could be a job. Be like, hey, listen, go test out the links. Let me know, like, what do you think about this page? And get feedback from the kids as to how are they viewing it or how are they processing it visually as well as sort of tactile.
And the other piece of that, Chris, is, kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week, which is, we're starting the year with the kids.
Right.
So like, if this becomes your platform every day, right?
And that's what it will be.
Exactly. And you're sharing it with them and you're showing it to them. And, your morning meeting starts here. By the time we do go remote, or if we go remote or whatever, like they'll just know it. They'll understand it. So like, to me, and, again, this goes back to purpose, right? Like, what's your purpose? So like, you maybe wouldn't give this to a first grader cold, saying, here, go have at it. But, as we said, like, because this is going to be how you start your morning meeting every day, by the time, they need to do something with it that's a little more independent,
they'll have it. I mean, I've never seen my classroom. I've still have not been in my room because, I was there for 5 seconds. So I'm doing this with no idea of what my room will look like. So my goal is to be able to go virtual if I need to, having what I know my morning meeting will look like. So
yeah, and definitely the virtual like this is far more important than the in-person, because I think regardless of what plan we're doing, none of our classrooms are going to look the way they used to.
Right.
They're not going to be warm and fuzzy, and they're not going to have meeting spaces and small group spaces. They're kind of going to be like dystopian rows of bareness. So like, having this be different and be like that sort of like that warm, inviting like, community space, like it's almost better that it's totally opposite potentially of your actual classroom, because like hopefully they go home and they're like, oh cool, I don't have to stare at a random blank like virtual dystopia as
alien teacher
that I just came from. Right. And then this gives a little bit of fun, and it's like, oh yeah, like when we were in school today, she told me how to do this. Now I know how to navigate it. Like, it's all good. And then it's them, from a standard standpoint, there's always like the ELA standards and math standards stuff. From like a tech standpoint, explaining to them how to use something like this is a skill, and it is a standard about kids knowing how to interact with technical things, or knowing how to navigate apps, programs, websites, so this is actually teaching them these skills to be at a certain level. Critical thinkers are like, why am I going to click on this button? Or like, what's that spaceship for? Oh, I know what it's for. I know it takes me back to the certain place. So if I don't need to click it if I don't need to, especially in first grade, like that's just giving them a good sense of how to interact with the technology, where they may have a bunch of different things to choose from. It makes them think about, why am I clicking?
Did anybody else just hear that thunder? There was just a massive bolt of lightning and thunder. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I saw you jump, but I keep getting the alerts that there's one within 10 miles of here.
Yeah.
We cannot lose power again.
Oh, I don't think it's coming to you, Vivian.
Oh,
I don't think so.
I'm sorry to hear it, because Karen, you're just a few miles from me. I'm starting to hear the rumbling.
It's up here for sure, so it's coming.
Deborah, would you like to share?
Sure, and you will, like I said, see some similar, like Karen said. Karen, Kathy, and I worked together, and we kind of talked about what are the extra things in our classroom, because we're going to be making all of the actual lessons uniform. So, all right, let me share it. Oops, that's not it. Sorry. 1 second. Okay. Okay, so basically there's my classroom. There's going to be the weekly schedule up there. And then, like I said, thinking about what is the extra stuff, that would really be morning meeting, read aloud. We put a reteach library also. Rashid is the first grade mascot for word study and phonics. So he will be very well known in the classroom. So he's going to be the little button that will take you back every time. So you'll see that my morning meeting looks similar to Karen's, but what you might not know is if you actually walked into my classroom, in real life, this is what the morning meeting center looks like. It actually looks almost exactly like this. So basically, where you might just see like, why does it say money? It's because we're going to be counting the days of the school year using money. They just don't know that yet by looking at it. When you see this, it's because we count the school year also using tens frames. So basically, instead of using a morning meeting area that looks exactly like this on the wall, we'll be doing it on the smartboard. So if you click the calendar, there'll still be somebody who has the calendar job. You know, we can put birthdays on there. It'll be exactly the same, but on here. So like Vivian was saying, if we go virtual, it's going to be exactly the same. We can still have helpers. We can still have everybody who's going to do their jobs. We do games on the number charts. We count. Like, these are all of the things that we do during a typical first grade morning meeting, and everything is right here. So it might look like a lot to you, but this is actually just what the wall would look like in my classroom, almost exactly.
And that's cool. And that's perfect, because that's exactly what we're saying. Like, that's where you
Yeah,
have to teach them. You have to teach.
exactly.
You can't
Right.
just give it. You have to like say to them, all right, like, here's why this is here. Because then they'll, in their minds, they know how to navigate that space just as they would in person.
Exactly. So read aloud, I kind of just made like books of the week. I think I'm going to change this so that I don't have to change it weekly. Like, I was thinking read aloud a day. I think I'm going to put bigger bookshelves in here. Oh, and I have 2 rush sheets. Oh, okay. I think that I'll make it bigger bookshelves so that we can kind of just add more and more books. So it's not only 5. I haven't really decided that yet. If you click on the math manipulatives, you'll see, it'll take you to the math room. And these are, again, going to be all of the manipulatives that we would be using in math. Like, when I'm teaching math, this is what I will be using. So if we, again, go virtual, everything is exactly the same. So it's just setting myself up for this. I put ABC over there just because we play a lot of games on there, but everything else that we've ever used is right there. Right now, this library still clicks to this, but it's actually going to click to the Epic library, the one that Sue and Michelle had sent out. I have also, when you click the iPad, the link to all of the apps, as well as the Heathcote Gateway. And we have the word wall, which is pretty cool when you click on each letter. This one is already filled in, but you can take away the words and put in whatever words you want. And I think that is basically it.
So clever. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out to that Neons group that I think Jennifer Chung told us about. They're amazing. I got so much from them that when this is done, I'm putting my entire thing just on there and being like, here. It was so helpful. But I mean, I think it's something that won't just sit there, because I think I'll use it every day in my teaching. So then it's available for them.
And that's key, is to weave it in, so it's not like a shot, not just showing them where it is and then they go home, but having it
Right.
woven in so that it is a natural part. And one thing about the teaching, which nobody's brought up yet, so hopefully it's innate, but I'll bring it up now that we're kind of, moving towards the end of this, is when you do click on things that you make links like to Epic or whatever, it opens up in a new tab. So what you want to do is, as you're teaching your kids how to navigate these things, make them aware about those tabs. Or if they're K1, 2 in Scarsdale, that the iPad is going to switch from the Chrome app to, the Epic app or something like that. And that they just have to switch back to either the previous tab in the browser or just switch back to that Chrome app on the iPad. And that goes to part of that sort of just teaching them how to function within it, so that they don't think that once Epic opens in a new tab that the virtual classroom is gone. It is still there. Who else wants to share? Let's go. Be brave, be bold. Catherine, or no, that was it. Ashley Cooper.
Okay. I played around with 2 ideas. One was the virtual classroom, and our team is actually still trying to figure out how the best way to use it. But I really loved how well the moving up adventures went in 5th grade for the end of the year. So I adapted that idea to for reading. So I made an independent reading sort of adventure for the students. So basically it's the same exact format that we had for the moving up, but I created like different tasks for kids to do after they read to like demonstrate their understanding and their thinking about their books. So like these are options that I would normally sort of give kids in 5th grade and to do in their reader's notebook. Some of them are new. I mean, it's a draft. I'm kind of just playing around with it. But for instance, if you click like on the diary entry, like there's a little like blurb of like what you could do after you read, a chapter of your book or whatnot. You could pretend to be one of the characters writing a diary entry. You could do letter writing between 2 characters in the book. We've done a lot of like character webbing in the beginning of the year. They could write a review of the chapter or the book, depending on where they are. They could write about the theme. They could do like a personal reaction. They could do like a mini podcast or like a video recording. And I'm thinking about like probably doing something similar where they'd have to post it on a class Padlet, like each week or something. I'm not sure how that would go or how many I would require them to do per week, but I like the idea of the virtual adventures, and I feel like I can just adapt it to like all different sorts of units, all different subject areas. So this is something I was just playing around with, and I have my virtual classroom too. It's not quite as developed yet, but so that's where I'm at now.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
I know, I'm excited.
It was great. Elise, I think you had your hand up as well.
Hi. Okay. So let me share screen. All right. So I played around with this a little bit before your class. From a couple of students actually challenged me, I would say, last quarter to beat their Bitmoji, like character. So one of the things that I started using was something called Book Creator. I don't know if you use it at all, but
Yeah.
I would say it's one of my favorite kind of tools that I've discovered. So I was looking at it from first the Bitmoji piece. I was looking at it from like a get to know you perspective. So if I had like a icebreaker kind of activity rather than having to kind of all speak in a circle or, in a shared kind of space, that we could do introductions in some capacity with the Bitmoji, because I know a lot of the students were excited about it. So I had rolled out, I tried something similar, but without the Bitmoji piece, where I rolled out like a few questions for the students for us to get to know them. So these were just like 4, that I chose just to kind of break the ice. And, I used it as actually part of my entrepreneurial unit that I did, but I was thinking about it for next quarter or I should say the beginning of the year, as like an icebreaker. So that's kind of what this was. And I thought it might be cool for those of you that use Book Creator, that each student has a page. And I don't teach elementary, but I do remember in elementary school having like a class book. So I kind of thought about it in that capacity. And then the students can kind of have a published piece, if you will, to, refer back to. Like we only teach quarterlies in, 10-week increments. So having that as like a takeaway from class, I thought might be a good idea. So that was that piece. And then the other piece that I worked on was, I think, Chris, you mentioned, and sorry, hold on. Can you still see it?
Yep.
Okay. So you were right with see, that's my animation, with the Schoology piece. And I think at the middle school, because we have Schoology, we might not have to, or maybe, I don't feel like I have to build out the classroom piece that's on a slide maybe as much, because most of our work is kept, in Schoology, at least housed there, but using some of those classroom pieces to kind of build out some of the activities. So this would be, something that I potentially kind of have as a piece that, doesn't change, and it would link up to all of the different Schoology class pages. And then this would link, for example, to kind of an overview of the curriculum. Instead of having a syllabus like we typically do, or an outline that's really just very wordy, if you will. And then I was just playing around with some of the different backgrounds that I thought, this is like the actual garden at the school. So I was looking at this also as something to kind of pull together, like the cartoon piece with, some real backgrounds. I'm still not 100% sure like how the garden will work in terms of curriculum, but I definitely want to utilize it so that we can still kind of implement it into the curriculum. So that was that piece. And then very lastly, I was playing around also with some different backgrounds. Some I saw, some I kind of were playing around with and creating. And the idea for some of these would be that students could be somewhat interactive. So I learned at the end of last year, I can kind of play back a video of them as I may be talking about, reviewing, or looking at a recipe. So I was kind of playing around with that idea a little bit. And then this link would bring me to different recipes that I would possibly want the kids to, prepare, look at, analyze in some way, and just started playing around with some of those links that we had talked about. I was actually thinking of bringing sewing back into the curriculum because I think that it's an individual type of activity. And if we can't cook together for the length of time that we typically do, maybe using like a conductive thread project or something related to sewing. So I was playing around also with this kind of backgrounds, and was thinking about like how to link some project ideas for some choice, student choice, as well as kind of the quick overview of what sewing is all about, since unfortunately it's become somewhat of a lost skill. And again, just playing around, these are some activities that we do in class, and I'm so used to cooking with the kids and working very much on top of them, both inside and outside. So I'm really trying to wrap my head around how to give them that same experience and feeling when we can't kind of participate in the same type of activities. So like another piece, I don't think it's linked here, but another piece of the class relates to personal finance and entrepreneurship. I was playing around also with a lot of those pieces, but I think it's on a different presentation that I think I actually did on my personal drive and not this one. But so anyway, those were just some ideas that I had and started thinking about kind of mushing together, not just the Google products, but like you saw, like with Book Creator or some of the other creative kind of outlets that are out there.
That's awesome. And that is what's cool about this, is when you start diving into it, you kind of get those, like the mind starts going like, oh wait, I can do this, or oh wait, what if I did this, or I can do this over here and I didn't think about it before. Sort of like that Flippy thing, like, you start thinking about other apps or other places that have similar functionality that may work better for you. And that's fine. A lot of this is just about sort of showing you possibilities and things of that nature. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, who else? Nicola.
Chris, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How many projects do we have to submit to you in order to get credit? Like, do we need to have one virtual classrooms, like one of everything, or?
No, it's like we said in the beginning, and you may have joined late because I know people were at those other things, is that depending on what you've done, and I'll share my screen and show everyone again, is on the blog, there's now a link to this participants projects sheet. So people have started populating this. Like, here's my example. I put a link to a folder with a bunch of partial projects. And then you explain in the notes a couple of sentences about like, here's a folder with a bunch of different things that I've tried and are in progress and I'm working on. If this happens to be like a file, just a little description of, I really connected with the escape room thing. So I focused all my work on the escape room aspect. So that's why I'm just choosing one thing to be the project, because it was super robust, right? Like you know, the way, you know, from what Elise just showed, like you know, she could submit the folder and be like, here, I got a bunch of sort of halfway done things, and that's fine because she had book creator. Like, it's okay if this took her in a different direction where she's like, oh my God, I can actually use this other thing in a different way. So it's kind of your call. Some people kind of didn't really like the escape rooms and kind of went a different direction and spent more time on their virtual classroom. So just link that one project. You know, it should be up to you. Like, either toss the folder in there if you're not sure about any of these things and you've done a bunch of each. Put the folder in there and explain that. A couple of sentences like, hey, I'm just trying, sort of messing around, because we want this to be useful for you guys. And for some folks, that's going to be a bunch of partially done attempts at things. For other people, they're going to instantly know that, oh, here, I spent a ton of time on this. So that's why it's, you know, it's the name that you registered with. So that way there's no confusion about who you might be. The link to either the folder or that file, and then just a brief description of what it is.
Okay. All right, then I'll just talk about my virtual classroom. Then,
Go for it.
Sharing my screen. So I guess mine is a little bit different as to how I'm planning it. I'm gonna have this template, but I'm gonna create a new one for every unit of study that I have, because otherwise it's just too much to organize. So this is the introductory slide, which is roughly what my classroom will, you know, my virtual classroom will look like. And then moving on to the next slide, this is what every unit will have. It'll have a link to my office hours. This will actually be a document that they can sign up for. Oops, excuse me, I'm not using my links. And then there'll be a unit overview, and they can go back to, they can use I call it like an anchor page. So they can use the anchor on the side to go back to their weekly activity lists. And I'll go through with all the students what all of this means. I don't have to bore you guys with all of that. And then I have, and I'm preparing this for my first unit of the year. So I'm going to spend a lot of time going over each one of the apps that we'll be using in my classroom. And each one of these has a link to kind of get yourself started with each one of these apps. And I will explain to them, you know, what apps are used for what purpose. And they'll be expected to set themselves up with their Google accounts and kind of get a basic understanding of what they should be doing. I mean, they already know how to use Turnitin and probably know how to use Edpuzzle and Nearpod, but the other ones like Padlet or Wakelet or Kami, I'll have to walk them through. But again, they're the same. Like, I want to be as consistent as possible because there's so much content that I'll be covering that I don't want to keep throwing new apps out them the entire year, kind of like what we were doing in the spring. Every time I learned something new, I was like, let's try this app to try and make things more interesting. So I've kind of streamlined the apps that I'm going to be using, and very strategically I'm using them for specific purposes. Then I have, every unit will have like a current events wakelet. So if there's anything that I have on my news stream that I think is important, I'll post it here for students to be able to access. And there'll be current events articles that are really important at the moment or have to do with that particular unit of study. So for example, the first unit of study would be the Enlightenment and the social contract. So there are definitely going to be articles about George Floyd and the protests in there for students to use, and it'll be like talking points throughout the class. This is something that I developed from another course that I took this summer, the Laddie Classroom. And it's basically the rubric that they're going to be using throughout the whole year. So the first unit, I'll spend some time explaining to them what the purpose of the rubric is. And it's the same rubric that they're going to have all year about the different social studies skills that they'll be developing. And hopefully they'll become more proficient as the year goes on. And then just an introduction on Google Classroom, which by sophomores, they pretty much know how to use, but just a breakdown as to how I'm going to organize my Google Classroom, because I found that for a lot of students, especially students with executive functioning issues, the Google Classroom tended to be a bit cumbersome to try and figure out what were materials and what were assignments. So I spent some time trying to figure out how to organize that. And I think I've figured it out. This is my plan, so hopefully it works out. So I just want them to be aware that each quarter, this is how my Google Classroom is going to be organized. So at least they know where to find stuff. So it's easier for them to organize themselves. What else? A couple of other things. And then there's, this is like one of those templates that you showed us, I think this our second class. I can actually go to that document and show you that one. I was trying to figure out a way where I can kind of, because I won't be able to see them taking their notes when we're remote, I created this digital notebook to help them to organize themselves and kind of be able to keep track of where their notes are for which day of the week, and it's gonna parallel our special hybrid schedule that we have. So that way I'll be able to kind of check in on their notebook and see where they are with their work, and make sure that they're staying consistent and up to date with their homework, and they're taking their class notes and that sort of thing. And then yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Like this will be my and the last thing is that I will have each at the beginning of each unit I'll have different pre-assigned group works for students to be in, so that when I'm in Zoom I can break them out into those home groups, so I know automatically who they're going to be working with if I have something that they're going to be working in groups on. So I'll have like a page where they can, get to know each other and who is in their new groups each unit. So the basic idea is that the first unit is to kind of get them acclimated. So I'll go very slowly with how to use this process, and then with each consecutive unit, I'll still use this format, but the information for all of these links will be different. And so instead of them, I know you had mentioned, instead of, keeping one homepage so the link is always consistent, because I'm using Google Classroom as the management system, I won't have that problem, because every unit I'm going to have a new homepage, a new Anchor Classroom for them to go to. And yeah, then that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Nice. Anyone else? I'll jump in. Catherine?
Well, after that, I kind of don't want to. They're like, yeah, well, okay, but yeah, I'm going to share mine. So I teach music, elementary music at Heathcote. And so I worked on a couple of things. This was the virtual classroom, because I will be teaching virtually. I just will be doing it from the school, which is, sorry, so slow loading. Anyways, I took pictures of my classroom and then added my Bitmoji. I don't know why I'm not loading here.
Read the weather.
That must be it. So I tried to, make it look as familiar, since most of the kids have been in my room before, so it should be a familiar place. I have my little cat friend here who will, be the anchor or whatever, with a little explanation, because so I won't actually, I'll be Zooming with them when I want to try to explain how things work. Some of the things just link to little videos, fun things. Heathcote Huskies links to the school song. This is the entry point for each grade. So when they click on that, there's me in the music room again and dancing with scarves. I've dropped in some little audio pieces that I put together, some ideas on how to move. They can click the cat to go back, click, and then sometimes I've made the cat like hide a little bit to make him a little more fun. Second grade really looks the same. I started trying to do like a little bit more here with making instruments. This, oh, that one I didn't finish the link. That's actually the light I have in my room, which I found. So that was like a kind of dance party kind of thing. So I didn't get done with every grade. It's an inordinate amount of time, and it's just sort of this endless hole. But I did use the same technology for a project that I did complete for a class I was taking on identity. And I was really happy with, using this format. I just thought it was just so inviting for the kids. So this would be like for a 5th grade class, trying to get them, again, I like the idea of sort of you can do as much or as little as you want as a student, because I'm just I had trouble getting my students to engage. I mean, all the materials were there, but I didn't want to overwhelm them. So I used the splotches kind of as their way in, talking about inspiration and what, social emotional growth kind of stuff. But then I focused on Black Lives Matters, and I found all these different performances where young people were moved by the Black Lives Matter movement, and they can watch the videos from here, or sometimes interviews, sometimes more information. There's just a lot of great stuff. I try to keep it visually, like you were saying, not too complicated. There's so much you could add in. So there are a bunch of different performances. I even chose activism as a type of performance, and then it was time for their turn. And then when they click on the matching splotch, it gives them a breakdown on how to do an activity and to record themselves. And then once they were done with it, they could do all of it, they could do one of it, they could do none of it, but they could share it. I liked the thing you had done with the 5th graders, Vivian and Ashley, with, using the Padlet. So I put my own song up there to kind of try to get them inspired. So that was it. I tried to do a little escape room. I didn't get very far with it, but I like that idea as just a fun way to test knowledge on stuff. Anyways, it's like I said, I didn't get very far with it, but all this stuff is really great, and it's great to have time to focus on it with the structure of a class, because it gets you motivated to get it done.
That's great, Catherine.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
loved seeing your room. I loved it. I love just seeing your room. It made me strangely very emotional, and I feel like the kids will get a reaction to it also. I thought it looked amazing.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
had the same reaction too. It made me want to be there.
Yes.
I was just like, I miss our building. I miss it. And it was really nice how you did that.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky because it does, it's very busy. Visually, it's very busy, and some of your classrooms are so much more pared down. And so I'm glad. That's a good review. I was worried about that.
Cool. Anyone else? Or is everyone tapped out?
Oh, Pam.
Pam, go for it.
So hopefully I'll do this right. Wait a minute. So of course I messed up. I want to go to share my screen.
Yeah, and share the whole thing on the desktop.
Let's see if I can go to, if I have, of course now I can't find it. I thought I had it up there. Is it up in front of us?
Oh, you gotta share screen and then choose the desktop. There you go, here it comes.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just will share my Google Classroom. I started here and I thought at the beginning of the year, we usually do welcome activities. So this links to the welcome, and I made a bingo board, and each one of these leads to a link where they do an activity. That's a beginning of the year activity. Some are Google Forms. Some are Giving Tree looking for a book, because I usually read that aloud. There's some other books and links. The Fox, because I'm Fox Meadow, takes us back to the first slide. And then the second slide is my everyday math, which links Excel, writing, and reading, which link to the different links. And so that's basically my Google Classroom. And then I played with the virtual class.
Now, one thing, just to interrupt real quick, go back to that slide, the number 4 slide right there with your
this one.
the grid. Yeah, click on that getting to know you. The link under I.
Getting to know you.
The one that's red.
Oh, under getting to know you.
Click that. Because I think, yeah, so this is super important. You link it to this edit slide. And you don't want to do that, because when you give it to the kids, they'll actually then be able to, they won't be able to fill out the form. They'll be able to change the answers or the questions on the form.
Oh, how did I, so what did I do wrong?
Because when you're working, this goes for everyone, when you're working with a form, you cannot take that address that's up there and use that as a link. What you have to do is you have to click the send button, and you click that send button in purple.
This one.
Yeah, when you get that, then you see where it says send via, and then the second option is a link.
Yep.
You click that, you copy that link. That's the link you would use in, now go back to your slideshow.
Okay.
And I'll show you the difference in how it looks.
Back to this, right?
Yep, click on that, and then use the pencil.
Because I'm going to edit it and
delete. Yep.
Get
Just, yep, and then delete.
Oops. No, I didn't.
And then paste.
Command V, right?
Yeah, and then apply. Now click on it. See how it looks different?
Oh, okay.
Because you had pasted in the edit link. You had just pasted in the form URL from the top. Then the kids wouldn't be able to fill it out. They would actually be editing the file. By giving them that link, you basically would be making them editors on it, and they would all be in the same one. Nobody would be able to take it. So it's super important when you're doing forms that you preview it with the little eye icon to see what it's going to look like. And then when you want to give the link to other people, you use that send button. And even if you're not going to email it, you grab the link, and then that will give the published link to people to actually then submit the form.
Okay, terrific. So glad I used that.
So yeah, you get the adventures you were going to show us?
Oh, do you want to see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So this is the adventure, and I'm doing it in present, that I'm stranded, and that's my story. And then this, what she did here, the instructions, and each one of these links to a math form. But did I do them wrong?
Yes, because you notice you can always tell when you do them wrong, because if you look at it, especially in the top address bar, you see how it says edit? Like along the address, it says edit. That means you're editing it. And then when you look, see that right there, it says edit? You don't want to take that. You always want, because you notice you can't actually fill out this form right now. You can just edit the questions. You can add questions. With forms, you always want to do the send button and then click that little link icon in the middle to grab the link. And then that's the link that you want to then put in to things that you give out to people.
Okay. So I have to redo that part of it.
You just got to edit the links. Yeah. Just edit the links on your little, your buttons and your text and stuff.
Yeah. So I'll have to go back and edit each one. I don't think I can do it here.
But this is good. This is why we, go through this.
And then it links to the bucket, and the bucket has the math questions.
The
And
bucket
then-
one was done correctly.
It was?
Yep.
Well, it's a miracle.
Yeah, see?
And then the door, to open the door. And then you found the surfboard. And then from there, go back and to the next slide, I think, and to class.
That's awesome.
Very cute.
That's great.
So that was what I was playing with, but thanks. So now I'll know how to do that right.
Yeah, that's a big one. Making sure, because forms are unique in that way, where that if you just share that edit with the link from the address bar with the edit at the end, you're basically giving whoever you give that link to implicit access to edit. You don't want to do that. You want to use that send button to grab the actual like published link in order to do that. So that's very cool. Anyone else? It's getting close to 9, so we can start wrapping this up unless anyone else is itching to share, which we're welcome to do. Everyone good? All right, so I want to show you one. I know I probably brought it up another time, but I'm going to just mention this in that there's a little trick if you're working on a bunch of these things and you're doing these things for different classes, and you don't want to have to make copies of things for 2 purposes. When you're in Drive, if you click on an item, you can then do Shift. You click it once to highlight it. If you do Shift Z, it will allow you to add that item to a second folder. So like, let's say you were making one of these and you wanted to leave it in the folder to turn in as your STI project, but you also wanted to organize it under your own like 2021 school year folder, you can use Shift Z to add this file to another place. It's essentially like creating a shortcut. So it allows you, and it looks just like the move box, except it doesn't say move, it says add. So like you can navigate over, and find, like, I can put this into my PD folder. PD, so I can navigate this over to like my STI, and then what'll happen is it's the one file in both places. So if you made an edit on one of them, you'd be making an edit on both of them because it's not 2, it's 1. Whereas a copy, if you wanted to edit one version of the copy, you then would have to manually go to the other one to edit the other one. So Shift Z is helpful because you can add it to the different places. Like before I made a copy of this thing, right? Remember like earlier tonight, I made a copy of it and call it STI file demo, but I can also just add it there. So then that way, if I go into that folder, and I look for it, I see it, it's there now. And it's the same file. It is just located. It's like the old Windows shortcut, right? Where you'd have a shortcut to a file on your desktop, and when you double clicked it, it actually opened it up wherever it was. That's what that is. So Shift Z, click it once, Shift Z lets you add it somewhere else. That'll be helpful in terms of organizing this stuff, especially if you're creating it and you're sharing it with a co-teacher or you're sharing it with a grade level. You may have it organized in one spot for your own organization, but maybe they share a folder with you and they say, put your stuff in this folder. You may not want to move it out of your own personal organization, but you may want to have it live simultaneously in those 2 places. It's essentially, it's just a shortcut. It's the same file. It's just being located in multiple places. So hopefully that is handy. Anything else, Miss Robert?
I don't think so. This is a lot of fun. I enjoyed this. I love seeing everybody's work and like talking about things and everybody sharing ideas and like all those Facebook pages and cool stuff. And it was really fun.
And hopefully you guys all found this valuable. This will be up on the blog tomorrow, and then you can rewatch it, look for those tips and tricks, fill in the participants projects form, and that's on the blog as well. And obviously, when you're done with everything, you'll take the survey as normal and all that good stuff. So hopefully everyone enjoyed this. And
Thank you guys. It was great.
Thank you.
Lots of
Yeah, it
great
was really great.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
all.
much.
Thank you.
Lots of ideas. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a good night. See ya.
You too.
Everybody.